Today, we're going to be discussing the time-old debate of the Tau. In the Warhammer community, ever since the Tau's inception, there have been the Redditors on one side that claim the Tau are terrible for the setting, and then the normal people on the other side that think that they're cool and have varying degrees of liking or even loving the faction. The other day on a Twitch stream, a new chatter of mine asked me this very question, my thoughts on the Tau, and I went on a little bit of a rant of the cool things that I think make it such a valid faction for Warhammer 40k, and I just thought it was cool enough to make into a full video. I think my best question is, what do you think about the Tau, benevolent race, all putting together in the same direction, or are the Ethereal sus and doing some hormonal or mind control on other castes? I think that just looking at the timeline, the fact that Tau were like most species in their primitive years, you know what I mean, in their developing years, basically caveman Oonga Boonga years, and suddenly these Ethereals appear and just get everyone to get their heads stuck out of their asses, and they all just rally together on what feels like on a dime, is unusual. Now, could they have just been that charming and laid out that convincing of an argument? Yes. But due to the nature of sentient and non-sentient life, because war is not only observed in human beings, I find that not impossible, but improbable. So I do think that the Ethereals are most likely employing something. I mean, 100% the Ethereals do something, and like some modern day governments, if something goes wrong, they sweep it up under the rug, you know what I mean, and use their complete and utter control of the caste system and the information flow in order to cover up or overexpose or overindulge or villainize whatever they want, right? I mean, we've seen this with Farsight. We saw this with the incident when the Geller Fields failed with the forced, rushed warp travel production. The engineers told them it wasn't ready. They did it anyway. Suddenly, the whole ship gets stranded. Then everybody gets fucked. And, so, you know, and the Ethereals did everything in their power to cover that up, which is kind of interesting, you know? And so these super benevolent, hyper charming people that can get an entire species to never do war, you know, over the span of thousands of years, also needs to have a CIA-like propaganda machine in order to make sure that they don't get ousted. That's kind of interesting. You know what I mean? That's a little suspicious. I'm suspicious of the Ethereals. I don't know if it's direct mind control, and I don't know if it's direct pheromones. I don't know which one is the better, more accurate answer. But I'm also not I did not mean to skip that cutscene. We'll watch that cutscene over again later. I'm not one of those people that's upset about the Tau existing because they're not grimdark enough or anything. That's not where I stand on it personally. But I am still suspicious of Ethereals. Just because there's a few things that are too good to be true, and we know that the Ethereals have covered things up. We know that there's espionage. We know that there's subterfuge. And Farsight could break away the further he got from the Ethereals and the longer he was cut off. It was hinted at. So I'm very sus of the Ethereals, 100%. I agree, I'm on Farsight's side. Farsight's side, Ethereals just sus. Completely agree. And Farsight is an example that Tau society can prosper without the Ethereals. So again, I think the Tau can totally be good guys without ethereal pheromone shenanigans. I just think that the Ethereals themselves, conveniently showing up, being this, you know, guiding this shepherd for the species and guiding them to some kind of utopia that conveniently their caste rules over, you know. I appreciate relative realism over how dark a story is. I completely agree. I think the Tau are a fantastic contrast to the darkness of the 41st millennium. I think that the 41st millennium the grimdark vibes are absolutely perfect, but I think having a purposefully young and slightly naive species and empire with optimism and, oh god, what's the word? Idealism, where idealism is a guiding principle, I think is super awesome. The Tau fit into the grim darkness even with their optimism, in my opinion. They're a young and naive race, not used to chaos, and also they have no war presence at all. Yeah, no, exactly. This is what I was saying. I completely agree. I think that they fit fantastically. I think that the Redditors that complain, I totally agree, a needed contrast. Thank you. The Redditors that disagree with that and just like absolutely shit themselves and demand Tau to be deleted just don't know how to world build properly. I think the Tau are a fantastic contrast to the game. But again, wow, that's wild. Almost my comment word for word, same page. Exactly. Crinkerson, you know what's up. But again, long term, that naiveness might not last. They could lose their optimism. Who knows what they might turn into. Exactly, and that's okay. That's a real reality as they exist long enough in lore. If the Tau begin to teeter, off this optimistic goal, I mean, that's a grim, dark reality. But I think the fact that the Tau were born with this being the representatives and being the much needed contrast for the universe, I think will always give them a place of value within the setting. I think it's a highly valuable perspective to have. Exactly, as they grow, they might come more into contact with the warp and chaos, etc., and become jaded. Yes, and some Tau have become jaded. So there are stories of Tau murdering the humanity portions of the Tau thing because they were worshiping the greater good as a god, and it began to manifest into a warp creature, and they witnessed it, and they were horrified. Or demons making them go mad, or stuff like that. There's plenty of really cool one-off stories of what happens when you take a naive, like, fire warrior entourage, and they just don't know what to expect, and then they go through it, and it's fucking terrifying. And then the Ethereals cover it up, or help them recover from it, whatever that means. Or if Farsight fully separates them, they could have a massive civil war, which would change the course of their species. I completely agree. I think the prospect that Farsight holds for the faction is wildly fascinating. I think it's going to be phenomenal. I mean, just this conversation alone is making me want to make a Tau video. Or they make too many excuses for the Imperium to realize they're just mean and greedy. Right. No, I think the Tau have so many interesting ways that they can move. I think the Tau are phenomenal. But what do you guys think? You already know my thoughts on the Tau, clearly. But I know I can understand that they're still a divisive faction for some, and I'm really curious behind the purpose why, or why do you love them? Please let me know down in the comments below. Sometimes I wonder if Tau hate is just sourced in 3rd edition trauma or 4th edition trauma, the one where Tau were absolutely broken. And if it's just old heads, complaining about those times, and that stigma has just permeated through the rest of the game for some reason, or if there are other, like, very legitimate reasons behind people who have read their lore more thoroughly and said, you know what, this faction's not for me. I'm open-minded enough to understand that could be a very real perspective. So if there's any of you out there that want to share your thoughts, please let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Tau. See ya.